Hi, what's going on, Good Fruit Pod? It is Riss. I am not in the studio and I am solo. I sound a little crazy. Let me tell you why. Number one, I have been freaking sick, okay? I got whatever that amoeba virus or whatever the heck that they've been calling it on TikTok, the one with the sore throat, nasal congestion, like nobody's business. I feel like this is gross, but I feel like my mocos are literally concrete in my nose. Okay, I've been fighting for my life these past 2 weeks. So I definitely still have some of that in me, and I'm so sorry. I feel like every time I do some sort of solo episode, I'm like sick. But if you see me blow my nose, or if I sound weird, or if I cough, please just ignore it. And me and Carrington, we were supposed to film this episode together, but the day that we were gonna film was the day that I got so ill that we ended up needing to cancel and I just couldn't. Thus, why I'm solo right now. So Carrington did want to be here. She actually worked really hard to make that date work. Again, she's off doing amazing things, but I got the suds. I don't know. Second, why I'm not at the studio and why I'm in this little Gorgina space looking the way I do under this very heavy, huge, yet soft quilted blanket. I love it. It's because I'm a mother. No, I'm kidding. Kind of. There's actually two kids in this room, and by kids, I mean kittens, and by kittens, I mean menaces. Let me give you guys a quick picture, and that's all you're gonna get. So there's two in this room with me right now. One of them's being fostered. They're brothers. They were found in the concrete city. It's a million degrees where I'm at, so we're taking one in, and the other is gonna be picked up soon, and they seem really happy. So, also a disclosure with that. If you hear any sort of rustling, if you hear them breaking stuff, if you see a random cat run through this video or run on the bed, that's what it is. We literally just got them in this space as well. And if you're a cat person, you know that you can't move them around too much without giving them like major anxiety or depression. So, as a mother, I am doing the best for my children. I'm staying home, but you guys are coming with me. Thus why I'm here in this bed. Thus why I'm in this like comfy button down. Why I'm hanging out here. I couldn't leave the kids at home. So we're here and we're going to be doing this episode here, which we actually have a really special episode for you guys today. So welcome to the Good Fruit Pod. Hey. We are a queer affirming Christian ministry that analyzes God's theology and scripture to attest to why God accepts modern day homosexuality within the Christian faith. AKA, we are here to tell you that God loves the gays and why. Also, happy Pride Month from all of us at the Good Fruit Pod. I know I'm going solo here, but I know I can speak for everyone when we say happy Pride Month. Much love to y'all. We are so blessed to celebrate those who are living and loving authentically. We are so thankful to be celebrating such a beautiful thing with y'all. And in light of Pride Month, yes, we will be talking about Pride. So this is going to be a little bit of a different episode than what we usually deliver, but Pride Month is just so special. We want to give you guys a special episode along with it. So here we go. So to start off the episode, I want to make sure I give credit to where credit is due, because this episode would not have happened without the research that was done and the perspective given by this person that she is just like absolutely so amazing. So please allow me to introduce and please help me to welcome our new research and development person, Amanda. She is the newest addition to the Good Fruit Pod team. She's been with us for a good minute, but just because of the way we produce episodes and publish them, we're just getting to this intro now, but long overdue because she is just so amazing and we are so excited and thankful to have her. And I'm gonna take this minute to just like hype her up. Like I am so mind blown and I'm just so thankful to have her with us. So again, Amanda is our research and development person here for the GFP. She's going to be doing research on things that can help make our podcast better and the information that we give to you guys better as well. And hopefully soon, once we get some things cleaned up on the production side, we can get her publishing her own content. So keep an eye out for that. She is currently studying clinical health counseling, and at the same time, she's working full time. She works overnights, and girl, I just like don't know how you do it. And she helps with the pod, like a slay queen. So, for confidentiality reasons, I'm not going to tell you guys exactly what she does or where she's at and stuff. But what I can tell you in detail, however, is about her character. And just from what I've seen in the short time that we've been working together, she's been with the pod for about a month and a half, roughly two. And the work that she provides is just so incredible. She is very generous in how much she wants to give back to the queer community, which is just like, it's so admirable. And I am not doing justice in trying to describe her to you guys. And we are so blessed to have her on the team. You guys can't tell I'm literally geeked over Amanda right now. So thank you so much, Amanda. And also, I know I didn't mention it, but this girl funny as frick. She like gives you subtle giggles and I love it. And also, she's super slay and on par with the whole animal theme of this episode. She has pets and she gave us pictures to show you guys too. Her and her partner own the animals that I'm going to show you on the side. Sorry, the camera's reversed, so it looks weird when I point. But I mentioned giving credit where credit is due. And the reason I say that is, again, because this episode absolutely would not have happened without the research that Amanda provided for me to be able to deliver this to you guys. In fact, she did a majority of it. So in the beginning of the episode, Equal Partners Part 1, we did like a quick little clip talking about the holidays and world events that were happening around the videos posting, specifically some queer holidays that were happening. And this is something that we want to regularly start. And part of what Amanda helps us with is getting the research on these holidays, because the info that me and Carrington gave you that episode for those holidays and whatnot, we literally Gemini'd that information right before we started filming. And I just felt like Pride was such a big holiday that I could not just Gemini it like 10 minutes before whatever episode we were going to deliver to you guys. And because Pride is such an important holiday to the target audience of this podcast, and because honestly, I have a special place for it in my heart and I love celebrating Pride, I wanted to make sure that we gave it its due coverage as a queer ministry podcast. So I had asked Amanda, as our research and development person, to do the research on Pride Month so that we could deliver you guys some really great information. And I don't know what I was expecting. I know that she would do good work, but I gave her the assignment, said, hey, here's some questions I have about Pride. Can you give me some background? And girly delivered, okay. I came back a week later after giving her the assignment, and I was reading through the information that she gave us, and I was like blown away. And reading through what she provided, I myself was learning and getting inspired to even do more research on this topic that I already thought. Like, I was so inspired to research on my own already. And reading through it, I just thought to myself, this just can't be a clip. We need to make this its own episode. Thus, here we are having our Pride episode. Happy Pride. I'm going to move a little bit into the center of the camera more. And you guys can see me in my fancy little blanket. So that's how we got here. In honor of June, and with thanks to our Queen Amanda, we'll be talking about Pride. Specifically, we're going to be talking a little bit about its history, why it's still important today, and why we celebrate it, and kind of the ins and outs of everything. Now, I know that there's already media out there about the history of Pride, and it's available to all of us, but I also know that many gays, like myself, have not utilized those resources before. Maybe it's just me. But from observation, I don't know what it is, but just many of us don't watch it. Many of us don't look into it. And I don't know if it's because learning about the history is hard. Maybe it's because we're already kind of battling some of those obstructions to our authenticity in our everyday lives already. Why do we want to keep learning about it? But the discussion is important, and understanding the history and the reasons we continue to stand up for what we do today is also important. So hang in there. I know this just sounds like another documentary podcast, whatever, but I'm going to try to do things just a little differently for us, okay? Because if you're also like me, you just like aren't into long form documentary type podcasts. So we're going to try to do things in theme of what we usually do here at the Good Fruit Pod, and hopefully, keep your guys' interest as we do this. We are going to try to make things as easily digestible as possible for y'all to understand. Make it fun, make it light. Thus, why I'm going to be telling you all this information as if we were friends. I'm the friend. Right now, I really be the friend. You came over because I couldn't leave the kids at home alone. We're going to have wine and coffee over at my place. Come lay down. Let's have a girls' night in. The kids will be fine. We're going to lay in our beds and we're going to catch up on Gilmore Girls, okay? Also, in theme of what we do here on the pod, we may interject our own little thoughts or comments every once in a while, for discussion purposes. You guys came here. You guys came to this podcast, so you wanted it. And while we're on that note of interjection, I do want to clarify that today, a lot of what I'm going to be sharing with you guys is obviously research. Again, Amanda did such an amazing job on her research that I couldn't have said it any better myself. And she also gave really great perspective and commentary that I have to share with you guys. So there will be points when I'm going to be straight up reading off of what Amanda provided. I just cannot say it any better. We will be having slides come in and out of different quotes, either from Amanda or other resources, also little stats and whatnot, flying in and out of the screen. So just a heads up on that. I'll try to make it easy, but we all know my editing skills aren't amazing. And also speaking about other resources and Amanda, and going back to how she inspired me to learn more too. After reading the research that she provided, I went and I watched a documentary to further understand what we're going to be talking about today. And I learned a lot from the Peacock documentary, Stonewall 50 Revolution. And I just think it did such an amazing job of laying out everything that we're literally going to discuss in this episode. So key, if you don't want to watch this, go watch that. But I'm going to be talking a lot about what they described in there, just to further expand on what Amanda already shared. And also, I'm going to be sharing quotes from the interviewees and the people within that documentary. So giving credit where it's due, because we love that. Please don't send me to jail for plagiarism. I do want to acknowledge really quick before I get the comments. I know, and I've already heard it, guys. You should have done this episode at the beginning of Pride Month. I know. Okay. And don't get me wrong, I was concerned about the timing too at first, but then I actually ended up becoming really happy with the timing, because I want to make this statement really quick. Just because it's close to the end, that doesn't mean we can't still recognize it and celebrate it like it's the beginning. You still have time. Go wish one of your friends happy Pride Month. Let them know how much you love them. Tell an ally thank you for their support. And yeah, continue celebrating. It's important. Cool. Also, Pride Month doesn't just end at the end of June. Anyway, let's officially get into it. Again, I'm going to be reading a lot and literally just quoting what Amanda gave us and other people. So, got some papers. So, thus the papers. So much for feeling like a girl's day at home, huh? Hey girl, come on over and we can read through my documents. Okay, so let's get into this. The question that I gave her to start was, what historical events led up to the creation of Pride Month? And she wrote, in the early 1900s, people in North America and Europe began creating gay and lesbian organizations, such as the Society for Human Rights, which was founded in the 1920s by Henry Gerber, the Machine Society established in Los Angeles in the 50s, and the Daughters of Bilitis, which was the first lesbian rights organization established in 1955 in San Francisco. Okay. So, interestingly, these organizations were already established in the earlier 1900s. But the Stonewall riots, which was the event which we marched to commemorate, which then ended up snowballing into what became Pride Month, or inspiring its creation, I should say, didn't happen until 1969. So this is where I became super interested in why were these organizations already banded together before essentially what is this major event that led to the gay rights movement. Well, the Peacock documentary, again, Stonewall 50 Revolution, was really good about starting off the documentary by noting that the Stonewall riot was not the beginning of the gay rights movement, but was simply a milestone, and that the fight for gay rights was already happening before that, long before that. And this is something that really interested me because I was really interested in the environment. I was so interested to learn about what it was like before and to learn about what the older generation of the queer community used to have to deal with back in the day. And again, this documentary did a really good job of like laying it out and illustrating it and getting people's perspectives on it. And I couldn't help but notice that a lot of the prejudice towards the queer community comes from a place of fear, where that fear is a fear of losing power or losing control or losing comfort, which had a usual connection to money in some sort of way. Money and also politics. Sounds like a theme, but I just noticed that a lot of the major inflictions that were put on the queer community throughout the history of the United States specifically happened a lot of major historical or political events that tied back to the economy, or I guess what I should say, the security of our country. And again, I'm going to focus, and I guess I didn't disclose this either. I am going to focus on Pride and I guess queer history in terms of the history of America. Now, the battle between society accepting the LGBTQIA plus community, I think, extends back to very early history for the assumed biblical reasons, the assumed reproductive human law and human responsibility and natural responsibility to procreate, and those discussions and debates, which I think we cover on the rest of the pod. So I'm just going to leave that out of this episode. So we're just going to focus on the US history of this, okay? Anyway, but the theme of this oppression getting stronger with each historical event that the US went through, it just was like, it was so evident. And they gave examples in the Stonewall 50 Revolution documentary, and it talked about the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a major start to oppression on the queer community. And this was because when people were going into this financial crisis and when America was really devastated and reaching for hope, people thought that this depression was caused by God because of the quote loss of traditional morality that happened during the roaring 1920s. And it's what's actually really neat is that the documentary talked about how in the 1920s drag queens were a really big part of entertainment back then, and all sorts of audiences enjoyed them and enjoyed their entertainment, and they low-key were on the rise. And that form of entertainment was high key on the rise. But in this time of desperation and financial hardship, and when people just want things to get back to normal and want there to be a structure again when we're going through it, they reach to try to find a quick fix. And they found refuge in God, which is the classic American way of Christian evangelical values, finding refuge in the Lord. And on par, I guess, with the theme of the Bible of repenting, they thought they were getting punished by the Lord for their sins, and they thought their country and nation was going through it because of those things. And they found the things they thought were contributing to that, and they redirected their focus on drag queens, which is so unfortunate. And on the Good Fruit Pod, we always talk about both sides of the coin. You know, that is a common theme in the Bible, and God, you know, He does cause hardship to come on countries and cities that don't obey Him and don't follow Him. But I also think that was a major theme in the Old Testament. And if there's anything that we talk about here on the pod, is that Jesus came and fulfilled the law so that we could live in love. And I think that Jesus spoke more about love and acceptance than about making sure you were secure and comfy in what you do. In fact, Jesus, he was considerably modest in his financial status, and he talked to people of all sorts of backgrounds and invited sinners to the table. And again, a key component of what is the Christian evangelical faith is that Jesus fulfilled the law so that we can live in love. So it's just interesting to see how quickly America turned to these traditional Old Testament values, these traditional Old Testament remedies to try to find security again, when actually, which is interesting because I think Jesus, from what I've seen, was really okay with the uncomfortable, with being with people who weren't like him, with going against social norms. And so it's just interesting how the theology of the gospel goes out the window in a time of crisis. So just food for thought. But going back to things, in light of the Great Depression, people were trying to find that morality once again in order to hopefully save the country, I guess, and to get it out of this financial hardship. And a key component again was focusing on drag queens, but along with focusing on the what they thought, I guess, was the immorality of drag queens, the effeminate. This also began the implementations of laws against groups of queer people being in bars. So the prohibition against alcohol actually had just ended. And so bars were getting opened back up. But the claim was that queer people, wherever they went, mischief followed, question mark, or that they were the cause of the rowdy behaviors in the bars, or that they're just like trouble followed queer people, I guess that's what they said. And so that's why they were not allowed in bars, to try to keep the community morally responsible, especially when there is the influence of alcohol involved, and which I think is just a really interesting fact because, you know, God also talks about to not be a drunkard. And I think also Paul quotes that in the New Testament too. But yeah, I guess we just focus on one sin, don't we? Sorry, I'm very passionate about this. It blows my mind sometimes. But then it goes on to talk about continuing in history later on in World War II. There was the repression and the fear of communism entering in the country and dismantling America. And people, once again, I don't know how this happened, associated gay people with communists. And, maybe I just don't know enough about that. I don't know. And fun fact about me, I'm reading through the Communist Manifesto right now. Don't ask me why. Also, another extra fun fact with that, I actually used to read it to Carrington and give her overviews of it when we were in the same dorm in college together, right before bed. If I go missing my fellow citizens after saying that, you know what happened. But because of the fear of communism, again, this caused more oppression to come on queer people. And in light of this is then when we saw legislation being passed that LGBTQIA plus community members could not serve in politics or in federal positions. So like hundreds of people lost their job in this time in America. And again, it was all based out of fear. And then again, going forward in history, we get to the World's Fair, which they brought this up in the documentary, and I was like, what the heck is the World's Fair? So let me explain. It is the large international exhibition designed to showcase a nation's achievements. And I guess it's like a little traveling thing that goes between each nation, and people come and tour it, which low-key kind of cool. But when the World Fair came to America in 1964, our country's leadership decided that they wanted to make sure our society was cleaned up, to make sure that we were presentable to tourists, and to make sure that we attracted them to come visit and, reap the financial benefits of them visiting with us as well. And so this began those laws that greater policed the queer community, where we started seeing laws to arrest and detain people that exhibited any LGBTQI plus kinds of characteristics. And so this extended to girls could not wear jeans that zipped in the front because they were dressing in boy clothes, which I'd be flipping screwed. And I also had heard of this kind of policing and laws in a documentary that I had watched with Carrington a while back. And I can't remember the name right now, but it was the movie about the catcher, and I think it was the pitcher from on the movie A League of Their Own, the women's baseball team, and they had to live in secret, and how lesbians back then, the butch lesbians, they couldn't wear what they wanted, or they had to like hide just because of the way they looked. And I just like can't imagine that. What an awful time where it literally tweaks me out to wear something a little bit too girly, and the amount of like anxiety and just the way I feel so uncomfortable in my skin, to then have a law that just like makes sure that you stay within that awful feeling if that's just like not who you are. Like, wow, I can't imagine that. So here we have, in this combination, this is where we end up leading up to the Stonewall riots, where we see the laws against queer people assembling in bars still being enforced, and where now we have these laws literally policing what you wear and how you act. That brings us all the way up to 1969. Now, gay bars were still happening, and we know what happens. Police get paid under the table to not know certain things so that people can run it. The moms were also involved with running these bars, and if it's a source of income, they're going to have a gay bar. Morals change a lot when there's a dollar involved. That's fine. Anyway, so they have this happening, and going back to what Amanda explains here, this is then when we get to the Stonewall riot, in which she writes, during this time period, the NYPD would raid bars and restaurants that were known for having mostly gay and lesbian patrons. On June 28, 1969, they raided the Stonewall Inn, and patrons and locals gathered and fought back, causing 6 days of violent protests against the police. These ended on July 2nd, 1969. And I want to make a quick note on this too, because I hear a lot of people talk about how they don't always agree with riots and they don't always agree with protests. And, I didn't know how to go about that for a very long time. And it wasn't until I actually really need to give credit to my dad for this, as a man of color who had seen a lot of change happen throughout his lifetime in light of civil rights movements. My dad explained to me when I was talking to him about this, how a lot of people hate rioting and how a lot of people look past the justice that people are fighting for in these marches and in strikes, and eventually what ends up being this long time coming event that is just fueled by pent up oppression and anger from all these years of being treated unfairly. My dad explained how people ignore those things and the elements behind why these events are happening, why these riots are happening, why these protests are happening, because they hate that their comfort got disrupted. And I remember that has sat with me for the rest of my life ever since he said that. And so in light of this, before anyone discounts Pride Month being based off a riot, I just really encourage you to think about, are you mad at the riots happening because you don't agree with the way that people are fighting for their rights and fighting for justice? Or do you hate riots because it disturbs your comfort? And if your answer is the latter, then I really encourage you to pray on that. But that's how we got the Stonewall riots. And so 1 year later, on the anniversary of the Stonewall riots, members of the LGBTQIA plus community, organized by the Eastern Regional Conference of Homophile Organizations and the Christopher Street Liberation Day Umbrella Committee, held a march in commemoration of the Stonewall riots. Known originally as the Christopher Street Liberation Day March, which is the street people rioted at, the Christopher Street Liberation Day March eventually became known as the country's first gay pride parade. Over the years, the parades and marches have evolved and spread across the country and the world. In 2000, President Bill Clinton announced the month of June as Gay and Lesbian Pride Month, and President Barack Obama dubbed the month of June Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month in 2009, adding more inclusivity. Now, I've heard the comments, you guys have your rights now, or you guys already like have the march, you guys have the rainbow. Why do you guys need a whole month? And in fact, I have actually had the same statement that people used for the World Fair for the legislation that was placed on what you wore and what not in light of the World Fair in, what did I say, 1964. I had that same, maybe we do need a clean up society phrase said to me just last year. Actually, I think it was the beginning of this year. So, for those of you who say, why do you guys need a whole month, or why is it so in our face? For those who want to question why Pride is such a big deal and why it might be so in your face, which I honestly don't think it is, but to each their own, I really encourage you to think about where the LGBT plus community is coming from, in the sense of we were policed on just our characteristics, we've lost our jobs because of who we are, all we want to do is love others. We just want to love, but we're getting policed for what we wear, we're getting policed for our characteristics, we're being called mentally ill. I hope that you can please remember where we're coming from and also where we continue to be at. And this is where I get to my next point and next question that I asked Amanda to clarify for me or to answer for me was, why do we still celebrate Pride Month? Why is it so big still? And I really want to read you what she wrote because she did a really good job of expanding on this. She says, "There is a rise in hate crimes against the community. People are still scared of coming out and being kicked out of their homes and abandoned by their communities. Slurs against the community are used regularly, and some members of the community are even accused of grooming children or pedophilia. Gay and trans civil rights are being demolished. Several countries still have laws making it illegal to be gay, and that can even be punishable by death. Celebrating Pride creates a space of inclusivity, equality, and acceptance. It allows individuals who may not have a family or community of their own find one and feel safe." And this is a quote from the Inclusion Geeks, that these moments of protest aren't just immediate resistance, but opportunities to create long-term change. And on that note, I really want to quote Daniel Moody from the Woke AF podcast. And she said it really well in the documentary. She says, "We don't live in a society where you fight for your rights and then all of a sudden they're one and done. It's about carrying this idea of creating more space at the table, and more space in society, which more space at the table, just like Jesus, right?" Anyway, so for those of you who say that we have already achieved the society that we're looking for as a community, I beg to differ. And in case you're not convinced, let me capitalize that because I'm a stats girly and I love a good stat. Again, from Amanda, data from the ACLU shows over 500 anti-LGBTQIA bills this year. Each of the previous 3 years were also record-setting years for anti-LGBTQIA plus legislation. And since June 1st of 2022, the Alert Desk has tracked over 2,240 anti-LGBTQIA plus incidents in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. The numbers broke down are 610 protests, 360 plus propaganda drops, 350 acts of vandalism, 200 plus bomb and mass shooting threats, 180 plus assaults, and 45 plus cases of arson. These incidents have resulted in at least 208 injuries and 31 deaths. Oh, Riss, that data is from 2022. Your guys' society is still good. There's going to be hate anywhere. Or we have different political leaders now. You guys are in different hands. We have different means of security now. Let me go ahead and share one more thing with you that Amanda reported on June 10th of 2025. She says, "At the annual meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention, a vote was held and strongly endorsed to ban gay marriage and to reverse the U.S. Supreme Court's 10-year-old precedent case, Obergefell versus Hodges, which legalized gay marriage nationwide." The two-day convention, which started on Tuesday, June 9th, was attended by more than 10,000 church representatives. During the meeting, they held the vote to push for a ban on gay marriage and to overturn the case. There was no debate when this topic was brought up for a vote. The reasoning is that legislators have a duty to pass laws that reflect the truth of creation and natural law about marriage, sex, human life, and family, and to oppose laws contradicting what God has made plain through nature and scripture. Because of that line of reasoning, their resolution calls for overturning laws and court rulings, including Obergefell and Hodges, that defy God's design for marriage and family, and instead calls for laws that affirm marriage between one man and one woman. So for those of you who say, we have everything that we've already been fighting for, why do we still need to celebrate? We actually still are, and I will stand on that. For our country that is based on religious freedom, but only adheres to one theology, for a country that says civil rights for everyone, for the country of the evangelical Christian that still adheres to the behaviors of Old Testament characters when we supposedly believe that Jesus fulfilled the law so that we could live by love. I don't know. I pray for this country. The best I can do is give it to God and pray. And for those of you who feel just as excited about this as I do, I encourage you to pray along with me for a country and for, I guess, the world to know Jesus' love and Jesus' kindness and the truth of his fulfillment and the truth of his love. And also, speaking of love, I want to provide the insight and research that Amanda provided in view of individuals and in view of people, not just in a political sense or overview of our country. Why is it so important that we celebrate Pride Month? And why is it so important that we continue to celebrate as individuals? And Amanda did amazing researching this for us, actually. And she actually pulled from one of the most credible sources I can ever think of, Reddit, for opinions and whatnot. I'm a Reddit girly through and through. But she stated a lot of the answers revolved around not feeling shame about who they are and being able to live authentic lives. Celebration, courage, strength, and support were other very common answers. And again, considering we live in the law of love, I just can't help but wonder why we wouldn't celebrate something that brings such great inclusion. As a Christian myself, I don't understand how we don't promote the good that comes from celebrating Pride, where we judge what is good and what is right by the fruit it produces. And I just can't help but see how celebrating Pride and celebrating the authenticity of love and queer relationships, queer love, is not good. So I threw a lot of information at you guys today, and it's getting late, so low-key I want to go. But I really hope that you guys can appreciate and understand through this pod, and hopefully through the way in which I delivered it, just how important it is to celebrate Pride and the good of it, and challenge maybe some of those beliefs that society has brought us up to have. And before I go, one last little thing. On this pod, we always talk about both sides of the coin. And some of you may feel a bit contradictory about how I said, I don't understand how we don't celebrate something that promotes so much good and love and that produces good fruit. When there are the debates, and I won't debate it myself, there are bad apples in the community that maybe don't represent us in the best light, and where queer love isn't always necessarily promoted for its genuinity. And I understand that. And I struggled with this for a while too. And for those of you who are struggling as well, number one, I encourage you to listen to the podcast to understand why we argue that God is cool with modern day homosexuality. That's another part of the debate. That listen to the pod, sorry. But in terms of addressing it in the now, and what I can say right now, and something that's been on my heart, is addressing the perspective that views Pride as something that is sexually immoral or gross, or that queer love is just based on purely natural sexual tendencies. I want to challenge it with this. Jesus said that the only reason we see the splint in someone else's eye is because we have the log in our own. And I recently saw an expansion on this passage where it said, God isn't just saying you see sin in others because there's sin in you. And it's not just talking about you're a bigger sinner and so you shouldn't worry about others. But they expanded to say that the splint is actually made of wood, which wood comes from the log. And so the idea that you are seeing this small fragment of sin in someone else is because you yourself experience and know that sin so well that you are able to see the littlest bit of it in someone else. So I want to challenge those of you who view pride as this nasty celebration of immorality, sexual immorality. I really challenge you to pray on why you view pride that way and why you don't view it for the celebration of authentic love between queer people, why you don't view it for the celebration of saving lives and people's mental health getting better. I want to challenge you to pray as to why you don't celebrate this sense of community and fellowship and life that comes with celebrating pride. And I want you to pray and to ask God to show you why you only view the sexuality portion and making it immoral and making it gross, and only view homosexuality as this nasty, immoral filth, why it is that you cannot see the beauty in it and why you can't see the authentic truth behind it. So, with that, I'm going to go. Thank you guys again for tuning in to the Good Fruit Pod. And from all of us to all of you guys, thank you for listening. And we wish you a happy Pride Month. And of course, remember, God is good. God is love. God loves you. Go off and produce good fruit. Good night, guys.